Yo, what's up? It's your boy Jacko. It's to go, you either know or you don't. There's quite a bit going on in Black Clover, but I wanted to use this video to talk about some context clues picked up from the last page of chapter 341 that led me to yet another crazy theory. But I do want to take a quick second to let you guys know that I did plan to edit this video to make it look more presentable, but I am going through some very unexpected and very serious health issues, and I'm trying to balance school, work, coaching, and my own mother's health, so editing is more or less out of the question for now, and I do apologize. If you happen to know any editors, or if you happen to be an editor yourself, please reach out so I can give you guys the quality content you deserve. But enough about that. Let's get into the theory. On that last page, we see Yami, or rather, we see Tsukihiro, standing in front of what is called a Tory gate, which seems to be settled in an ocean of black water. And this alone is more than enough to take a dive into yet another rabbit hole. So let's do it. The Tory gates have a very interesting history in the Japanese culture. There are many of them spread throughout Japan to this day, but what do these gates symbolize and why were they made? Who were they made for? The Tory gates have a fairly rich history, but there's not exactly texts of lore or mythology on them. The Tory gates were built to mark the sites of sacred land, usually shrines, that were said to house spirits or gods known as kami. Passing through the gate was said to be walking into the realm of the gods, as the gates themselves are said to be a doorway to the gods. There are several kinds of Tory gates, but each one holds some very similar responsibilities, and this is to mark the sacred areas throughout Japan. Tory gates are vermilion in color to repel evil spirits. Each Tory gate is designed differently, and they all have specific parts of them that serve a different function. Today we will be focused purely on the Tory gate shown behind Yami in the latest chapter. If you look at it, you will see a rope hanging from one end of the gate to the other. This rope is called a shimenawa. Shimenawa are used in similar fashion to separate the sacred from that which is not. These were believed to ward off not only evil spirits, but it's said to even ward off things like disease. There were occasions in which the Japanese natives would hold ceremonies in which they would string these ropes along the sides of the streets to make it a pathway safe for gods to travel along. In a way, these shimenawa were used to attract gods whilst warding against evil deities. Shimenawa are mostly associated with Shinto shrines, where these ropes can be found in more places than just on a Tory gate. Shimenawa will be found in any place or object that a god may inhabit. Knowing the facts behind the Tory gate and the shimenawa attached to it, let's put it into context with what we have so far in Black Clover. Here's what we know about Yami, and yes, I will be refusing to call him Tsukihiro, so you'll just have to deal with that. We know that Yami was shipwrecked and found in the Clover Kingdom by Julius, who may or may not have been acting on behalf of Lucius, unbeknownst to him. We know that Yami and Nox were best friends who both went through the death of Morgan Foss, and from there, he went on to create a group of the kingdom's unwanted mages that would later become the Black Bulls, who seem to be a group of mostly arcane mages or very special mages with somewhat strange backgrounds overall. Yami was regarded as the Chosen One by Morris, as Yami's dark magic seemed to be the force that would taint William's World Tree magic to bring about the advent of Clipoff. The only other being that seems to have dark magic seems to be Lucifugus, although we have speculated on this channel that an intentional attempt to create a mage with dark magic was made by the Foss, but resulted in twins that would take the concept of dark magic and split it into two. Although we don't know the full nature of Morgan's light magic, we can say that shadow is darkness without form. Light is a very physical phenomenon, which means it has mass. Nox has detailed that his shadows don't exist, and this is true in real life, meaning they have no mass. Attach the darkness of a shadow onto the physical phenomena that is light, then we should have solid darkness. Just like Julius, the only other being that shared his magic was Osteroth, who we later found has not been in the underworld for upwards of 20 years. It's likely that Lucifugus and Yami share a very similar relationship. On top of it all, we have now discovered that Ichika blames Yami for the massacre of their clan, and to connect this to Lucifugus, it would seem this fits his MO, as he is the only devil in the series that we know of that has killed an entire family. Before we get into the meat of this theory, we must notice, as Buzzard had pointed out originally, that the sea seems to be black in color, pointing to unfamiliar oddities happening in Hino. Now let's incorporate the Tory gates and the shimenawa into this and form the theory. Let's speculate that Hino has several Tory gates. I would say that the people of Hino exist in a space that cannot be reached by most people, but especially devils, given the nature and function of the Tory gates and their shimenawa. Based purely on speculation and what we know of the gates and their shimenawa, I would speculate that this population was somehow able to inhabit the underworld, in a much similar fashion to how the people of the Seabed Temple were able to inhabit the bottom of the sea. Here's where things will get a bit odd. Given that the sea is black, I can only think that Hino is associated with the dead. In sources of Greek and Norse lore, the dead don't specifically go to a heaven or a hell. The only real division between the dead is among warriors and non-warriors, if that. It's been a while, but almost we talk about the origin of the triad and how they were bodies originally from the river Styx. Bodies of the already dead brought to life by who we would now know to be Lucius. This is an idea expressed not only in Dante's Inferno, but by a Greek philosopher who said he experienced death and came back. The interesting thought that we will be taking into this theory came from what this philosopher said that he experienced in the process of reincarnation. But to make his somewhat long story short, before they were put into their new lives, the dead would be prompted to drink a cup of water from the river, and the purpose of this was so that they would forget their past life. Styx has been called the river of forgetfulness as well as the river of hate. And we will get to why this is extremely important in just a second. But now knowing this, I think it is possible that Hino is within this river. Now be mindful, while this is called a river, it has to be massive in order to fit the millions of souls within it, which would explain why it looks like an ocean behind Yami. But let's connect it all and try to finalize this thought. It may go to serve that Hino is a land protected by the Tory gates and the shimenawa attached to them, which may lead into different dimensions. As far as Yami goes, it could serve to say that Yami traveled beyond this gate for a reason unknown to us. Perhaps a trick by Lucifugus. Being that these gates ward against evil spirits, Lucifugus may have very well found Yami as a malleable child. Malleable enough to trick him into thinking that Lucifugus could bestow upon him, or maybe even his land or family, great opportunities or fortune, and needed Yami to not only travel to him beyond the gate, but to allow him space within his body as a vessel to carry out these miracles. Keep in mind that Yami is barely a teen and therefore subject to extreme emotional and mental manipulation. Now Yami travels beyond the gate and allows Lucifugus room within his body, and here is when he realizes he's been tricked. Now in a body that may be able to pass through the gate into Hino, Lucifugus could have killed the Yami clan, as Ichika explains, and now we get to the final portion of this thought. Tory gates have been used in cases of exorcisms. There are some Tory gates that are built around grave sites and around temples. In some legends, exorcisms or purifications have been performed within these shrines protected by gods to expel evil deities. In some of these exorcisms, the demon is not just expelled, but they are captured within an object that will then be either discarded or protected from the general public. To develop a headcanon theory, let's say Yami massacres his clan because he's possessed by Lucifugus, but is then captured by the Ryuzen before the ones we know now. They then exorcise Lucifugus and trap him within the bracelet that we see Morgan destroy in the devil binding ritual. The capturing of Lucifugus may have resulted in the discarding of the bracelet that sealed him, or it was stolen by a former resident, possibly Lucius, of Hino and taken to the Four Kingdoms, where we then see it fall into the possession of the Fausts. But here's the tie-in. If Yami was taken over by Lucifugus, it could explain why he has what seems to be a devil heart, and we know that Yami himself is not a devil of any kind, but given that Yami's magic is dark magic, he was a perfect vessel for that specific devil, and the exorcism may have taken the spirit of Lucifugus out, but the remnant of the possession is the heart that still lies within Yami. Because of the atrocities committed by Yami, he may have been exiled by his people, even though he did not carry out these acts himself, but he did put everyone in danger. In this exile, it may have been a requirement to make Yami drink the water of what could be the river Styx to forget about Hino and his acts completely. Almost to absolve him of the horrific memories of killing his family, and also to punish him for going beyond the gates by sending him to a realm outside of Hino. This would explain why Yami seems to not remember much of his life in Hino. It could suffice to say that Yami has been lying or hiding this truth from everyone, but this is the same man that gave Veto a proper prayer upon his death. The same man that showed mercy to the ragtag team that is now a family and home known as the Black Bulls. Ichika is burdened with the memory of her slain family and may be jealous and even angry at the fact that Yami doesn't have to put up with the pain of remembering, even though he was the reason for it all. It would explain why Ryu knows Yami, but Yami doesn't seem to know him, since he does not mention Ryu once in all the time that we've known Yami. This consumption of the water to make him forget could more than likely even bypass Marx's memory magic. And to be extra thorough, let's talk about how the water doesn't seem to be black anymore. We don't know exactly what the deal is with Hino yet. On this channel, I have speculated that it is in a different dimension, and obviously in this video I have specified it could be in the underworld itself, and time moves much more slowly there than it does in the Four Kingdoms. But let's just say it's in the same world and same dimension, but just a different landmass. Hino could be not only protected by the gates to ward off evil, but to ward off outside magic or wandering mages as well. This would be a case almost exactly like we observe in the Heart Kingdom, where they're able to hide their presence from the rest of the other kingdoms, despite taking a good portion of the landmass of the Four Kingdoms, which could explain why Nox would not be able to see where Asta is, not only because of distance, but because of this warding protecting the landmass that we know as Hino. But now let's go with the thought that Hino is in the underworld and is within the river Styx. The water could be a normal color now due to the fact that Lucius is now the new ruler of the underworld, which would also explain why Ryu knows of Lucius and his abilities almost too well. We know that Lucius is able to purify demonic mana, so the effects of his purifications could very well have affected the water as well. For now, I think this theory could hold up quite well, but of course we will have to wait until we get more information from the story to see what we need to trash and what we can keep. Regardless, I think this is an okay headcanon that I wouldn't mind throwing in a Jack Clover series on this channel, but let's wrap this up in a nice bow. While I've given you the information to back this theory, what would be the point of it all? As it stands, this would just be a random occurrence with no real purpose within the story, so what purpose can we give it? Well, let's recognize that Lucius is able to turn people into paladins, and this is the threat that we have to face currently. While Asta's swords may be able to dispel this, let's put another card on the table since Asta is not quite literally on the table. Lucifugus may not have been in the underworld much like Astaroth, and thus has been able to escape the fate of the devils in Klipot, meaning he may be the last devil not under Lucius's direct rule. If Yami can learn of his connection to this devil, then it may be possible to let him in again to help not only against the paladins, but to restore the underworld, and much like Lucius can create paladins, Yami coupled with Lucifugus may be able to create demons, as Yami's dark magic is what tainted the world tree magic to begin with. So who's to say Yamificus can't. Even looking at the fate of the Fasts, it seems almost as if their souls were forcefully dragged from their bodies. And these are bodies of sinners, so if Lucifugus can interact with the darkness of souls, then maybe, just maybe, there can be hope in this fight against paladins without Asta. Sometimes it takes a monster to defeat a monster, and when all of them have been forced to bow to Lucius, forces that were once at odds will have to align to fight against a common enemy. But let's keep in mind, even with everything said here, that Ryu could very well have set up Yami, as even Asta mentions that his ki is similar to both Yami and Ichika's, which could be a very big red flag. Anyway, that's it for this theory. I really hope you did enjoy this. I do apologize again for not being able to edit this. I'm going through some very, very serious health issues right now, and I'm trying to balance all this work, school, and other crap. So I do appreciate your patience, and if you do know of any editors or you're an editor yourself, please, again, reach out so I can give you guys the quality that you do deserve.